So, a recent video by Bionic Dance pointed out that the dogma doesn't matter if you get rid of the faith. If you get rid of the belief in the imaginary friend, then the dogma doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that imaginary friend said if you get rid of the imaginary friend. And that means all those negative things associated with believing that imaginary friend leave. And I think that I agree with this. If you get rid of the weed at the roots, it's gone. It won't come back. But this is where the cognitive dissonance comes in. Because while I totally agree with that, and I totally see that, I totally understand it, if you completely get rid of it, it's not there. But because in my Advice to Parents series, and because of how I think that certain churches, certain denominations work to accomplish one of my goals, one of my personal goals, I can't just sweep them away and say, well, you're just like them. I understand that if you get rid of the belief in the imaginary friend, all of it's gone. But in the world that I live in, that belief in that imaginary friend is uber strong. And that belief in that imaginary friend is causing so much harm. So, I guess from my perspective, and at least the stance that I take when it comes to my Advice to Parents series, if somebody is saying, well, the imaginary friend actually said this, and this is what the imaginary friend's verses actually mean, which is something more positive, rather than kill the faggots, the imaginary friend, according to these more positive people, are saying, hug the faggots. I can't refuse that. I can't reject that. Because, you know, I'm not being an atheist. I don't believe in it. But if they're at least giving a more positive view, and while, yeah, you know what, it's not closing the cut, it's not stopping the cuts from happening, but it's putting a band-aid on it, and it's trying to help that cut heal. I can't reject that. Because, you know, some of those people that watch those videos look at me and they say, oh, you're an atheist, you don't even believe in it, why do you care? You don't even believe in it, you're going to hell. Well, I got a gay positive, more like Presbyterian gay positive Christian over here that says, well, I'm a Christian, I believe in your deity, I believe in the same things you do, only I see a couple of verses differently than you do. I feel that it's important to utilize that person in accomplishing some of my life goals. One of my biggest life goals is to make things easier for the next generation. Because, you know, growing up in a conservative Presbyterian church, I thought it was a fucking monster. I thought it was just this disgusting thing that I was born to sin. Just because I happened to want to be in a loving, monogamous relationship with another consenting adult who also happened to be female. And it wasn't till I went to a conference, I believe in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, where I met a more like Presbyterian minister. Somebody who was a Presbyterian. The denomination I grew up in, only she was the more progressive version of it. And like I said in a previous video, after I got off the phone, after I got out of that workshop, I called up my mom and said, guess what? So, yeah, that's dogma. It's a more positive dogma, but it's still the dogma. And I guess where I stand when it comes to this of get rid of the weed at the root versus, well, at least it's a better weed than another weed. I guess where I'm standing, especially when it comes to, like, my advice to parents series, I'd rather have a dandelion than poison ivy in my yard. Now, yeah, if I would rip out both the dandelion and the poison ivy at once, I'd have no weeds. But if the dandelion is able to somehow convert the poison ivy into a dandelion, which the dandelion is less harmful than the poison ivy, and that's just happening naturally, that's happening without my intervention. I'd rather just let that keep on happening. And then maybe eventually get rid of the dandelions. Or eventually help the dandelion just convert itself into regular old grass. So, yeah, I totally agree with the idea that if you get rid of the faith, you get rid of all the problems. But because of I see the more progressive denominations as a way to ease some of the suffering of those who are being oppressed by religion, I can't reject that. I can't just push it away. Yeah, it's dogma, but it's a less painful dogma. It's a dogma that's pushing a more peaceful voice. Because, you know, I think that if I had gotten that more peaceful message, I wouldn't have been through so much of the self-harm that I went through. I don't think I or some of the other people I know who have been hurt by religion would have gone through it if the people around them were practicing a more peaceful and a more progressive version of their religion. So those are my thoughts. I'm experiencing cognitive dissonance, clashing thoughts. Peace out.